And I think there are two values that we held very dear at that company and were really kind of drilled into us from the get-go. And we're actually, Gene, kind of screens that were used even at the hiring point. Do we make this person an offer and bring them on into CEB? And the two values were force of ideas and spirit of generosity. And while I wouldn't say we've ripped those values off or made them our own, I think if you ask people in the firm, they would say, even if they were not from CEB, that those two values are really core to who we are as a firm.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to have another great conversation around company growth, but from the perspective of company values driving growth, driving culture. And so when you think about that, hopefully you're not turned off because you're curious about why are values such an important force inside of a company growth? Well, we're going to explain that today. Our special guest is the co-founder of DCM Insight. They're a professional services sales training boutique firm. I could go deeper into it, but I'll let Matt explain that. We are talking co-founder Matt Dixon, and Matt and I have an incredible conversation about the importance of values. His two values that are really core to the success of their company are unique and different, but it will also be something that really drives you to the next level. So when you think about that, keep that in mind. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm a CEO coach. We do executive coaching. We do leadership development, helping managers become leaders. All that in service of growing your company, taming the chaos, and you becoming the leader you need to be. If you're curious about the next workshop we have to help you be a better leader, all you have to do is go to training.coreelevation.com and you can sign up for free today. My name is Gene, and I'd love to serve you in any way possible to grow your company and be a better leader. Now, here's the interview with Matt. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Hey, Gene, how you doing?
I am awesome. We're going to have a great podcast today about the leadership. Really excited to talk to you. I know that you have a co-founder, and he couldn't be here with us, Rory, but Matt, you're here to represent DCM Insight. Tell us about the company and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. Rory sends his regrets, so hopefully I won't say anything that he'll regret having not shown up himself. But DCM Insights is we're a boutique professional services firm, and what we sell is business development training, research-backed business development training to professional services firms. So if you think about a law firm, an accounting firm, a consulting firm, executive search, investment banking, public relations, marketing, any professional services firm, the sales force is really the partner, made up of the partners. These are known as doer sellers or seller doers. I hear that term used interchangeably. What that means is that these folks are not full-time salespeople. They're part-time salespeople. They're responsible, if you think about a lawyer, they're responsible for finding new client opportunities, landing those clients, retaining those clients, growing those relationships. But they're also responsible for doing all the legal work, right? All the work on those legal matters and with their team. And so that makes it kind of a unique world. And most of these professionals, as you know, Gene, are not super comfortable with sales. They are very, very some of the smartest people in the world, but not comfortable in their own skin when it comes to the commercial part of their job, which leads to a lot of bad commercial behaviors, like sitting back and waiting for the phone to ring and hoping that people will just find you and they'll come to you automatically and you won't have to sell yourself. So that is it's a unique space. I grew up doing research in business to business sales. So think about people selling software, medical devices, kind of typical sales. And this is my first foray now going on about 5 years into the professional services segment, which I found to be fascinating and sorely in need of this kind of support. So we're working with firms around the world. We're a global organization. We are really focused on law, consulting, accounting, and executive search are our key segments, but we do have some programs underway with some other types of professional services firms like engineering and PR, architecture, et cetera, which are very similar to those aforementioned segments. And we really focus on training partners and pre-partners, so the associate level professionals in those firms.
I am curious. I love sales. I think it's,
Mm-hmm.
My frame around sales isn't that it's slimy and whatnot. I think a lot of people look at the used car salesman and go, I don't want to
Yep.
be sold to.
Glenn Ross. Yeah.
I personally have a mindset of sales it is the moment where someone makes the bet on themselves or
Mm-hmm.
on new set of skills. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I
That's a
agree.
very empowering mindset that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
So I could talk to you about sales all day long, but I am curious, how do you see sales, like professional services, being impacted by AI
hmm
over the next 1 to 2 years? I know we can't go too far out in the future because it's changing so fast, but it's not quite there yet. I know it's supporting sales and whatnot, but in 1 to 2 years, where do you see AI's impact on professional sales?
So I would say two things. One, I think it gets a lot of press. There's been a lot of ink spilt on this, which is the power of AI to support, in our case, to support partners to be more efficient and effective commercially. So the biggest enemy for a partner, the first one, I think, Gene, is what you said, which is this negative image they have about sales, right? So we spend a lot of time in our training trying to reset that mindset with partners about what this really is about helping, is about delivering value. And that's really no different for why you became a lawyer or why you became an accountant. It was to help people on these technical things that they don't really understand as well as you do. And sales is really no different. So that's the first obstacle. The second obstacle is time. Think about a lawyer with 2,000 hours billable hour requirement from their firm, a partner in a law firm, and then on top of that, they got to go find time to sell. I mean, that's really, really hard. There just isn't a lot of time in the day to do it. And so AI has the potential to really make that 15 or 20 minutes you find on your calendar to do business development, to make it that much more effective, right? To surface opportunities, to scour the news, the court decisions, the regulatory changes on your behalf, and serve up a punch list of here are clients you should go to because of your expertise, because of their need state. Here's a sample message you might reach out to them with. That's what gets a lot of press. I think the one that gets a little less press is the impact of AI actually on the client side. So one of the things we found in our research is that professional services as an industry has kind of spun on this axis, Gene, of if you do good work, you build a good relationship with your client, they will automatically come back to you again. The incumbent advantage in professional services has been huge for at least 100 years now, right? It's the axis upon which this whole world spins. And it makes it really hard for others to come in and steal the business. If there's already a law firm or accounting firm or consulting firm in there doing the work and they're doing good work and the client likes them, they usually automatically get the next piece of work. That is no longer the case. Our research shows that 5 years ago, 3/4 of clients would automatically go back to their same professional services firm again if they did good work and they like the firm and the partners and they have a good relationship with them. Today, that's closer to 50%. Looking out 5 years from now, clients, only 37% of them were willing to attest to the fact or the idea that they would automatically go back to their incumbent providers. And a lot of what's driving that is that clients now, armed with AI, are able to kind of scour the landscape for different service providers. Who are the boutique and niche firms out there that actually are better suited for this piece of work and charge less money for it, right? Who are the alternate service providers out there? How should I be structuring this agreement? How can I put together an RFP to price compete these different providers against each other and get the lowest costs, the best terms and conditions possible? So it is really putting the screws to partners and firms in a pretty impactful way. We talk to firm leaders all the time. And they say, look, we are seeing for the first time in our firm's history, there's always been this 80-20 skew, right? 20% of the rainmakers drive 80% of the bookings for the firm. But what they're starting to see is the middle of the performance curve and the tail, the high performer population starting to peel apart, meaning that the high performers are figuring out how do I win client business, retain it and grow it in this more challenging client buying environment, but the average performers are really being left behind and they're struggling to figure out. And that is putting a lot of growth pressure on these professional services firms.
Excellent. Again, I could talk all day long about all your insights, and that I know you're a very data-driven firm, and that probably is
Mm-hmm.
gets you a lot of the clients that you have today. But we're going to take a different approach. We're going to
Sure.
look at the leadership principles and the culture of DCM Insight that took you to 112 on the Inc. list is very impressive. I know
Thank you.
a lot of people I've talked to that are maybe in the top 10, and they go, God, I was so close to getting number one, but
Yeah.
like you probably didn't have the hopes of getting number one, but 3,000% growth rate in three
Yeah.
years means
Yeah.
you're doing something right internally, right? It's not just about your sales thing. You're keeping people. And so let's talk about, what do you think are the leadership principles that make you guys successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So on the one hand, I think we've got like great product market fit. I think we're delivering a product that the market hasn't really seen before, which is research-based training for partners and associates. all that stuff is great. I think though, when you come down to it, we built a team. We're now about 20 employees plus, I would say, about 30 contractors, many of whom we rely on pretty heavily around the world to deliver our training programs to these firms, to our clients. And when I think about leadership principles, so there's probably, if I took a step back, there's a lot of people in our company who hail from the same company, actually. So many of us worked at a company called CEB, which was known as Corporate Executive Board back in the day. They were sold to Gartner Group in 2017. I myself spent about 18 years there, but I think our leadership team and even our facilitator bench, our 1099 contractors around the world, there are a lot of CEB alumni in that group. And I think there are two values that we held very dear at that company, and were really kind of drilled into us from the get-go. And we're actually, Gene, kind of screens that were used even at the hiring point. Do we make this person an offer and bring them on into CEB? And the two values were force of ideas and spirit of generosity. And while I wouldn't say we've ripped those values off or made them our own, I think if you ask people in the firm, they would say, even if they were not from CEB, that those two values are really core to who we are as a firm. So the first one, force of ideas, we believe in research and data and science. We don't believe in kind of anecdotal evidence. We don't believe in personal opinion. We believe in doing the hard work. The Activator program, in the book, The Activator Advantage, that the program is based on, took us more than 2 years. Actually, we were just calculating yesterday. It was about 3 years start to finish from when we kicked off the research to when we published the book. That is like painstaking work. There's a lot of late nights, a lot of arm wrestling about how to interpret data, a lot of crafting the message, and then turning it into something that's meant to be consumed by a reader, but more importantly, into a training program that can drive impact with partners and associates. That's a lot. It's a lot of work, but we believe that that's the thing that sets us apart. And so that translates into internal discussions too, right? We believe that if you bring data and you bring an informed point of view, it doesn't matter if you're the co-founder or if you're a new analyst on the team, your opinion is heard and it's recognized. What we don't have a lot of patience for is opinion and anecdote and people shooting from the hip. We really do believe in data and research and science. The other thing about the other value is the spirit of generosity. And I think one of the things that made CEB really unique as a business was the fact that we somehow collected, in the end, probably a couple thousand people around the world who were all highly, highly motivated to bend over backwards for clients and provide a real kind of white glove service experience to clients, but also were incredibly generous internally towards their colleagues, stepping in and helping when somebody's underwater and needs help and is a little bit buried or behind on some projects, and doing what you can to take work off their plate in the interests of our clients and of our business. And so those are screens that we use, and we certainly see both of those values at work in the company. We're looking for people who are kind of, I would say, productively skeptical about conventional wisdom, are data-oriented, research-oriented, have a kind of a scientific mindset, but we're also looking for people who have a spirit of generosity towards clients and towards their coworkers. And so I think those are the two values. I would say we're pretty early. We should probably codify our firm values, but if I were to take a stab at it, I'd say those two are pretty close to kind of how we're wired as a business, what we look for in talent, and what we hold up as important internally, what we celebrate as well at a firm-wide level.
We've been talking about values. You may be wondering why there's such a critical force inside of your culture and your performance. Well, when you are surrounded by people aligned together with the same values, that doesn't mean you think the same. It just means that you might be more proactive together, or you might believe in collaboration, or you might believe in data-backed decision making. Whatever it is, when you're aligned around people that are going together with the same values, you're going to have a much more of a force of a company. But when you have people that have different values, like you have a reactive person with a proactive person, or someone who's more gut feeling data decision making versus data, you're going to be frustrated. And so that's one reason why this is a driving force for a culture. But if your performance goes up because people are working together in the same way, the same manner, and you want to make sure that you do that well. Back to Matt. When you talk about the values like this, I love the fact that it's so clear, and I haven't heard those exactly before, so it gets my curiosity going. The force of ideas and the spirit of generosity are not on the common integrity and, what are some of the others? Things like ownership.
I mean, we believe in all that stuff too, but
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Those are the
Right.
table stakes in
Yeah,
today's
yeah,
world.
yeah.
When you are hiring people, when you think about these values, how are you assessing, do they align with them or not?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question. I think so. If you look at here's a good example. So if you look at there's a guy who on our team, one of our executive leaders, his name is Matt Kelly. He runs our global faculty bench. Matt is a former CB colleague. Matt also was at Duke Corporate Education for a stretch, and he's had leadership positions in training businesses, whether CB or at Duke or now with DCMI for really his entire career. Matt is every single day talking to potential faculty. He's getting inbound requests on LinkedIn now. With the Inc. listing and some of the press we've gotten, we're getting a lot of people who are interested in training. Being a trainer for us, being a faculty member, folks who might have a side business but are interested in working for us as well. And so Matt's developed a really good set of screens, and those are two things he's looking for. I think one is he doesn't care so much that, and this might make us a little bit unique, he doesn't care so much that you were a partner in a white shoe law firm or a big four consulting firm or one of the top investment banks. That's nice, but actually what he's looking for is somebody who is really wants to roll up their sleeves and dig into the research. And so our very best faculty, I can tell, we go to these faculty certification sessions, we screen them, and there'll be some folks in the room who get up and kind of wax poetic about, well, here's what I did when I was a lawyer. Here's what I saw our top rainmakers doing, or here's what worked for me this one time. That stuff is fine. But the really effective faculty members we find are the ones who are asking really hard questions about the activator research, asking hard questions about some of the other social science data and research that we cite in the program, and really want to understand this stuff and understand it at a level that is way deeper than the average learner, the average participant is going to understand it, irrespective of what their personal experience is. They may never have been a partner in a professional services firm, but it's that mindset, that skeptical intellectual curiosity that they bring to bear that is really, really important to us. I think the other thing is that spirit of generosity. Obviously, we think about just our contractors. We pay them. We think we pay them in above market rate because we're looking for really good people. But we also ask a lot of them. And I think one of the things our very best faculty are the folks who are leaning in, helping their colleagues prepare for deliveries that might be a bit challenging or a little bit off the beaten path, or with a demanding client, leaning in, helping them prepare and not getting paid for it, right? And doing that because they believe in what we're doing as a business, and they believe that there's a rising tide that lifts all boats. And a lot of that is fueled by being generous towards one another, also towards our clients. I mean, our clients, we have a roadmap and how we roll our program out. Our clients doesn't stop them from asking for additional conversations, additional help. And our very best faculty are always the ones who say, absolutely, be more than happy to hop on the phone with your leadership team, talk them through some of this content, really get to understand your firm, what makes you guys tick, what makes you unique in the marketplace, what makes your partners unique. And that's important to our clients. And our best faculty they're not watching the clock. They're trying to watch the outcomes and the impact that they're having on colleagues and on clients.
So we've been talking about the values of your organization, and I want to kind of back up and just like, if you were really looking at the success formula for your company, you've got a small team, boutique, you've got a very clear market, you've got a good set of solutions for that. But those leadership principles, what have we left out of this conversation that would help us understand why you are where you are?
So one you mentioned before, and it was this idea of ownership. And I would actually say that's super important for us as a small business, and one that relies heavily on contract facilitators around the world. We don't just look for ownership, we look for complete ownership. So meaning we bring in people, we give them a lot of responsibility for product, for delivery, for internal functions, for delivering client outcomes, and we expect them to own it. We also expect them to ask for help when they need it, and we expect colleagues, and whether it's a contract faculty member or it's a W-2 employee, we expect them to jump in and offer help when help is asked for, and even more importantly, when you see that help is needed. And if you sense that somebody's reluctant to ask, offer, right? That's the generosity we're looking for. But the ownership is really important. It is not a huge management superstructure here, right? We don't have tons of the span of control is pretty broad, in other words, and so we bring on people who actually are expected to take on a lot. And I've always been a believer that I think managers or leaders kind of fall into two buckets. One, you've got those who are skeptical that people can take on this next thing, this next project, this next challenge, this next responsibility. And then there are those who are cut for a different cloth, which is you learn to swim by swimming. So get out there, try it, and we're here to help if you need help. And I think I've always been more, and Rory's always been more cut from that second cloth, which is push people, challenge them, give them more. And if you hire good people, they will step up and they'll figure it out. And they'll ask for help when they need it, and they'll make some mistakes, but they'll thrive in the process. And that creates this updraft in the organization, which I think is really powerful. And it keeps people here because they see their careers moving. They see that feeding the growth of the business. And they see direct outcomes or impact with clients on what they do day to day internally.
I want to switch gears a little bit here because my
Sure.
mind has been kind of curious around taking someone who really understands sales. And I
Mhm.
know not every CEO understands sales. We were talking about before we cut this on, we think that
Yeah.
they should. It's a really incredible skill that not only to know, but also to be able to develop others through. Because if you don't know sales, you can't help anyone else. And I'm just gonna throw you a curveball maybe,
Mhm.
but I'm not trying to trip you up.
Sure.
What is the commonalities of good sales and good leadership? Have you ever
Mm.
thought about that?
So yeah, no, I haven't thought about that actually, but let me take a stab at it. So I think one would be, I do think intellectual curiosity is a big one. I think that cuts across, and it's not just leaders, executive leaders and salespeople. It's like you look at almost any profession or function, those who are intellectually curious and are kind of, we were talking about this before we started recording, but it always looking to learn, always looking to dig deeper, ask the hard questions, and they want answers, right? And they go find the answers. If they have to, they find them on their own. I think that is a that is common across all. Like when I spent a long, long time studying great salespeople, and I think it is that intellectual curiosity, that genuine curiosity about your clients, about their business, about what they're trying to get done, about how they're going to make this decision, about why how wrapped around the status quo their minds might be, what they're worried might go wrong, and what might lead to indecisiveness or hesitation on their part. I think the other one in this has been spoken about pretty broadly, but an empathetic posture, I think, is certainly, again, it's not exclusive to executive leaders or salespeople. It's probably true of high performers in any function, but I think being other focused and being empathetic is something that is a commonality across those folks. And then I think maybe I'll throw out one more, which is, we wrote a book many years ago, but way before our Activator, called The Challenger Sale, that came out in 2011. And we talked about how these great B2B salespeople were very focused on helping clients see around corners, helping them think differently, reframing the opportunity. Because one of the things we know clients often do is they kind of shoehorn their need into a specific kind of box, and they say, hey, this is what I need, here are the providers we're talking to, here's about how much I want to pay, now I'm just competing these vendors on price. And what challengers are really good at is helping the client take a step back and even asking questions, is that what you should be trying to do at all? Should you be going right or left? I know you reached out to us for this, but is that actually the right answer for your business? And being very comfortable by asking those tough questions. And I think what's motivating that is not a desire to be difficult or controversial or aggressive. It's a desire to be helpful. And what I think is so interesting is that the very best salespeople, most of them would tell you, I like to win, I like to sell, but actually what I really like to do is help my clients get to a great answer and a great outcome for them. Sometimes that's buying from me. Sometimes it's actually buying from my competitor. Sometimes it's just keep doing what you're doing today because you don't need to buy anything, right?
Yeah.
You guys have the capability to do this yourself. And I think seeing people through to those decisions, which can be very difficult, is a source of compensation and reward in and of itself. And then I think that is pretty similar to executive leaders, and they are very focused on being helpful, being, the term servant leadership, I think, gets tossed around a lot, but they are very other focused, and they're very focused on being helpful towards clients, towards their team members, towards their colleagues at the leadership table. How can I be helpful, not directive, but how can I be helpful and help us all get to a better outcome together?
I have to apologize. One of my favorite sales books is The Challenger Sale, and I didn't realize you wrote it.
Well, well, I'm
Um,
glad, because if you said you didn't like it, I always told you that my co-author wrote
yeah, but that
it.
it,
So
you know, it's
it was a joint project. So
and so I know that I don't know if it's not the remake of this, but have things
yeah, yeah.
updated with the Activator Advantage because that's the newer book.
Well, Gene, there's no apology necessary, because I think what's interesting is that a lot of people know Challenger and know me in the B2B sales world, but nobody in professional service, I say nobody, but very, very few people are actually very familiar with that work at all. In fact, the Activator Advantage starts with a story about me presenting the Challenger research at a strategy consulting firm and being stopped about 45 minutes in by the managing partner. There's a ballroom of 500 partners. And he said, "Can you stop? Like, we're not salespeople. We don't actually sell anything here." What I said was, could have been career limiting or could have been funny. It turned out it was funny. I said, "Can we just stipulate to the fact that there's a mysterious process by which the client's money ends up in your firm's bank account? Can we just call it sales? I know you don't like that term." And they all laughed, and it was fine. But these are very different worlds, right? And I think you're right. We've kind of reinvented ourselves as being a professional services focused shop,
Yeah.
laser focused on that doer seller world. But our history, our heritage is really out of the B2B sales world.
I'm glad that you brought it up, and I feel embarrassed a little bit because we do research here, and this just wasn't in that research, and I just didn't go deep.
Yeah, of course, no worries.
Matt, really incredible conversation here about the culture that you've created using values, and it really does drive your culture. So I really appreciate company values. So many of the conversations of this podcast of fast growth companies come back to this, and a lot of people go, it's still squishy. It doesn't feel like it's work,
Sure.
but it's the underlying force and unity things. When it's great, things work really well. When it's off, things just fall apart, what I've seen.
I,
So
I
thank you
think you're
for
right.
being here, Matt. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate your wisdom.
It was great to be with you, Gene. Thank you for the invitation.
Wow, what a great conversation. I really appreciate you leaning into this and getting as much out of this as possible. Values are a critical force inside your business, and don't underestimate that. So that being said, when you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of growth think tank. As always, with courage. We'll see you next time.